I was 22 the first time I stayed alone in my parents' house during a storm. They had gone out of town for the weekend. I remember being excited about having the place to myself. The weather forecast said heavy rain. By evening, the sky was already dark gray. The wind had started picking up around sunset. By 9 p.m., the storm was in full force. Rain slammed against the windows hard enough to shake them. Thunder rolled constantly in the distance. I was in the living room watching TV. The lights flickered once or twice, but the power stayed on. The house felt different at night when I was alone. Every sound seemed louder. Every shadow seemed darker. Around 10:30 p.m., I heard the first strange noise. It sounded like a faint knock. I muted the TV to listen. There it was again, 3 soft taps. Not loud enough to be urgent. I told myself it was probably a branch hitting the siding. The wind was strong enough to throw things around. So I turned the TV volume back up. About 15 minutes later, I heard it again. 3 taps. Then, silence. This time, it sounded closer. Not like it was hitting the wall. It sounded like it was coming from the back door. I stood up slowly. The hallway felt darker than it should have. The only light came from the living room behind me. I walked toward the kitchen. The back door had a small glass panel at the top. Rainwater streaked down it constantly. I stood a few feet away and listened. Nothing moved outside, just rain pounding against the patio. I felt stupid for being nervous. I walked closer to the door. I leaned slightly to look through the glass. All I saw was darkness. The porch light was off. I realized I hadn't turned it on. I flipped the switch on the wall. The porch light came on instantly. It illuminated the small patio and the fence beyond it. No one was there. I felt relieved. I told myself the wind must have knocked something loose. I went back to the couch. Around 11:15 p.m., the power flickered again. This time, it stayed off for about 5 seconds. The house went completely dark. When the lights came back on, I felt a sudden chill. The TV had turned off. The silence in the house felt heavy. Then I heard it again. 3 taps. But this time, they were louder. I didn't mute anything because the TV was already off. I just stood up slowly. My heart was beating harder than it should have. The tapping came again. It was definitely the back door. Slow and deliberate. I grabbed my phone. I turned on the flashlight. I walked back into the kitchen. The porch light was still on. Rain was pouring down harder than before. I stepped closer to the door. I stared through the glass again. At first, I didn't see anything. Then, lightning flashed. For a split second, the entire backyard lit up bright white, and I saw a figure standing just outside the edge of the porch light. It was near the fence, completely still. When the darkness returned, the figure was gone. I froze in place. My brain tried to explain it away. Maybe it was a trash bin blown over. Another flash of lightning hit. I looked immediately. This time, the figure was closer, standing at the bottom of the patio steps, not moving. I couldn't see a face clearly, just a tall shape in the rain. The porch light flickered, and then it went out. The backyard disappeared into darkness. I stepped back slowly from the door. My hands were shaking slightly. I tried to control my breathing. Then the tapping came again. 3 slow knocks. Right against the glass. I didn't scream. I didn't move. I just stood there frozen. Then a voice came through the door. "Please help me." It was a man's voice. It sounded weak, almost desperate. "I need help." The storm roared behind him. Rain hit the door hard enough to vibrate it. My mind was racing. What if someone really needed help? What if they were injured? But something felt wrong. He wasn't banging, he wasn't shouting. He was whispering, and he never said my name. He just kept repeating the same thing. "Please help me." I slowly stepped backward toward the hallway. I didn't respond. I didn't make a sound. Then his tone changed. The desperation disappeared. "You're alone in there." My stomach dropped. The voice sounded calm now, almost amused. The back door handle started moving, slowly, testing it. I realized I had locked it earlier. I could hear the metal shaking slightly. The handle stopped. Then there was a hard slam against the door. The glass rattled violently. I ran into the living room and grabbed my car keys. I didn't even think about calling the police yet. Another slam hit the back door. It sounded like his shoulder this time, then silence. I peeked down the hallway carefully. The kitchen was dark except for the faint glow from outside lighting. The porch light was still off. Then lightning flashed again, and I saw him clearly. He was standing directly against the glass now. Staring inside, his face was pressed close enough to distort slightly against the rain-covered window. And he was smiling, not a wide grin, just a small, calm smile. Like he knew something I didn't. The power went out again. Complete darkness filled the house. This time, it didn't come back on. I heard one last knock, 3 slow taps. Then footsteps moving away into the rain. I didn't wait to see if he came back. I ran out the front door and got into my car. I drove straight to a gas station down the road. I called the police from there. They searched the backyard. They found footprints in the mud near the fence. They also found something else. My side gate was open. Someone had unlocked it from the inside earlier that day. I still don't know how long he had been in my yard before I heard the first knock. But sometimes when it rains hard at night, I remember that smile against the glass, and the way his voice changed when he realized I wouldn't open the door. I was 19 when this happened. My parents had left for the weekend to attend a wedding out of state. I decided to stay home and watch the house. The forecast said it would rain all night. By early evening, the sky had already turned an unnatural shade of dark gray. The air felt heavy and humid. Around 8 p.m., the rain started. At first, it was light and steady. Then, it became aggressive. Water pounded against the roof in waves. Wind pushed against the windows hard enough to make them creak. The gutters overflowed within an hour. I actually like storms. They made the house feel insulated from the world, like nothing outside could reach you. By 10 p.m., the streets were empty. No cars passed by. Even the neighbor's porch light was off. I locked every door and window out of habit. I double-checked the back door, then I went upstairs to my room. My bedroom is directly beneath the attic. The ceiling above my bed is thin drywall with insulation above it. You can usually hear heavy rain clearly through it. Around 11:30 p.m., the storm intensified. Thunder cracked close enough to shake the house. Lightning lit up my entire room through the curtains. I was lying in bed, scrolling on my phone. The noise of the rain became background static. Eventually, I stopped noticing it. That's when I heard something different. A dull thud. It was subtle, almost blended into the storm. I paused my phone and listened. The rain continued. The wind howled. Then, I heard it again. Another thud. It came from directly above me. I sat up slowly, my eyes locked on the ceiling. My brain immediately tried to explain it. Maybe a loose branch had fallen on the roof. Maybe something from the tree scraped across the shingles. Then I heard something that didn't sound like wind, a slow, dragging noise. It moved across the ceiling above my room, not outside, inside. The sound was too controlled, too deliberate. I held my breath without realizing it. The dragging stopped for a few seconds. Then I heard what sounded like shifting weight, like someone adjusting their position. I told myself it was an animal. Maybe a raccoon got into the attic. That made sense. But then I remembered something. There was no attic access from outside. The only way into the attic was through a pull-down hatch in the hallway ceiling, and that hatch was inside the house. I got out of bed slowly. My heart was beating harder now. The storm outside suddenly felt less comforting. I opened my bedroom door carefully. The hallway was dark except for a faint glow from the bathroom nightlight. The attic hatch was in the center of the hallway ceiling. It looked completely normal, closed, undisturbed. I stood beneath it and listened. The rain masked most of the outside noise, but I could still hear it. A faint shuffle. Directly above the hallway now. My mouth went dry. If it was an animal, it was moving slowly, carefully, almost like it was trying not to be heard. I stepped back into my room quietly. I grabbed my phone. My hand was shaking slightly as I unlocked it. I considered calling the police immediately. But what would I say? I think something is in my attic. They would probably assume it was wildlife. The sound moved again. It was back above my bedroom. Then it stopped. Complete silence. Even the storm seemed quieter for a moment. I stared at the ceiling. Then I heard something new. A faint tapping. 3 light taps. Directly above my bed, I felt my stomach drop instantly. It wasn't random, it wasn't debris falling, it was spaced evenly. I stepped backwards slowly until I was near my bedroom door. The tapping stopped. Then I heard a slow creaking sound. It was coming from the hallway. I froze. The attic hatch made a very specific noise when it opened. A wooden creak followed by the sound of hinges shifting. I heard that exact sound. I stepped into the hallway. The hatch was no longer flush with the ceiling. It was slightly open, just a few inches. I stared at it, unable to move. Water from the storm dripped loudly outside the house. Thunder rolled in the distance. The hatch lowered another inch, slowly, like someone inside was pushing it down gently. I felt something in my chest tighten. I grabbed the nearest thing I could find, a metal lamp from the hallway table. The hatch stopped moving. It stayed half open. Darkness filled the space above it. I couldn't see anything inside. No movement, no sound. I whispered, "Who's there?" My voice barely carried. There was no response. The storm continued raging outside. Then I saw something move inside the attic opening. Not clearly, just a shift in darkness, like someone adjusting their position. Then a hand appeared. It gripped the edge of the hatch from inside. It was pale, wet, like it had been exposed to rain. My entire body locked up. The fingers tightened around the wood. Then slowly, the hand released. The hatch pushed itself back up. It closed completely. Silence returned. I didn't wait. I ran to my room, grabbed my car keys, and left the house immediately. I didn't even put on shoes. I drove down the street and called the police. When officers arrived, they searched the house thoroughly. They pulled down the attic hatch. They found muddy footprints inside the attic insulation. They also found something else, a sleeping bag, and empty food wrappers. Someone had been living up there. They found the attic vent on the side of the house had been removed. It led directly from the outside into the attic space. Whoever it was had been climbing in during storms. The rain masked the sound. The officers never found the person, but they told me something that made everything worse. The insulation above my bedroom had been flattened in one specific spot, right above my bed, like someone had been lying there, listening, watching. Sometimes I still think about that night when it rains, about those 3 taps above my head, and the way that hand slowly gripped the edge of the hatch, not trying to break in, just letting me know it was there. I always loved the idea of being home alone. The silence felt powerful, like the house was completely mine. My parents were out of town for 5 days. I was staying at their house to keep an eye on things. It was late October, the kind of night where rain feels colder than it should. The weather alert on my phone warned of heavy storms through morning. By 7 p.m., rain had already started falling steadily. It wasn't loud yet, just constant. The house felt different when I was alone. Every room felt larger. Every hallway felt longer. I locked the front door at sunset. I locked the back door after dinner. I checked the windows twice. Around 9 p.m., the storm intensified. Rain hammered against the roof in waves. Wind shook the trees violently. Thunder rolled low and constant. It never fully stopped. It just kept circling. I was in the living room watching something mindless on TV. The lights flickered once but stayed on. I remember thinking how lucky I was the power hadn't gone out. Around 10:40 p.m., I heard something subtle. It wasn't loud. It almost blended into the rain. It sounded like a door closing somewhere in the house. I muted the TV. The storm filled the silence. I told myself it was pressure from the wind. Old houses shift during storms. Doors sometimes move slightly in their frames. I stood up and walked into the hallway. Everything looked normal. All the doors were closed. I checked the back door first. It was locked. The deadbolt was still turned. Then I checked the side door in the laundry room. Locked as well. Nothing looked disturbed. I felt slightly embarrassed for even checking. The storm was loud enough to trick my ears. I went back to the couch. About 20 minutes later, I heard something else. Footsteps. Slow. Soft. From upstairs, I sat frozen. The rain hit the roof hard. Thunder cracked overhead. But between those sounds, I heard it again. A single step, then another. It wasn't wood expanding. It wasn't random. It was controlled, measured. I grabbed my phone and stood up slowly. My chest felt tight. I listened carefully. Nothing for about 10 seconds. Then a faint creak from the top of the stairs. I walked toward the staircase. I didn't turn on the upstairs lights. I just stood at the bottom. The hallway above was dark, completely still. I called out softly, "Hello?" No response. Just rain against the windows. I felt a wave of cold move through me. Then I remembered something. Earlier that afternoon, I had taken trash out through the side door. I tried to picture locking it afterward. I couldn't remember clearly. That thought made my stomach drop. I slowly walked to the laundry room again. I looked at the side door. The deadbolt was locked, but the knob lock wasn't, and I never leave just the deadbolt. I always lock both. I stared at the door for a long time. Then I heard it again. Another step upstairs, this time heavier. I backed away from the staircase. My breathing felt shallow. I realized someone could already be inside. The rain would have masked everything. Every footstep, every door opening, every breath. I quietly grabbed a kitchen knife. My hands were shaking slightly. I hated that I felt this unprepared. Then the power went out. Everything went black. The TV died mid-scene. The house fell into complete darkness. The storm continued outside. I stood perfectly still. That's when I heard something that confirmed it. Breathing from the top of the stairs. Slow, steady, not mine. I felt my pulse in my ears. Lightning flashed through the upstairs hallway window for a split second, and I saw him, standing at the top of the stairs, completely still, watching me. The darkness returned instantly. My body finally reacted. I ran toward the front door. I didn't look back. I fumbled with the lock in the dark. My hand slipped from the handle. Behind me, I heard movement. Fast now. Descending the stairs, not running, walking quickly, controlled, like he wasn't worried about me escaping. I finally got the door open. Cold rain hit my face instantly. I stepped outside barefoot onto the wet concrete. Then I felt something grab the back of my shirt, hard. I fell forward onto the porch. The grip released. I scrambled up and ran toward my car parked in the driveway. I didn't turn around. I didn't want to see how close he was. I got into the car and locked the doors. My hand shook so badly I could barely start the engine. Lightning flashed again. He was standing in a doorway, watching me from inside the dark house, not chasing, not yelling, just standing there. Rain poured behind me as I reversed out of the driveway. He didn't move. The police arrived within 10 minutes. They searched the house carefully. They found muddy footprints on the upstairs carpet. They found the side door latch scratched slightly. They also found something in the guest bedroom closet, a backpack. Inside it were gloves, a flashlight, and a small pry bar. He had come prepared. The officers believe he entered during the height of the storm. He likely watched the house before that night, waiting for the right time, waiting for rain loud enough to cover everything. They never found him. There were no cameras in the house at the time, no clear fingerprints, nothing solid. For weeks after, I couldn't sleep through rain. Every storm made my heart race. Because the worst part wasn't that he broke in, it was realizing he was already upstairs. Before I heard the first step, the only reason I survived that night is because the power went out, and lightning gave me just 1 second to see him standing there, watching.